Hi, and welcome back to our fourth week of class. If you found my PowerPoint presentations in the files portion of Canvas, because I have them there if you want them. I haven't put them on the page where the video is so that that page wouldn't become cluttered. But if you are following them, you'll notice that the slides we go over today are from presentation number 3, because even though there's just a few slides for this week's content, it's an important one because most organizations love to do special events, and so we're going to talk about that. But first, before we get into our content, I wanted to pray for you. Let's pray together. Gracious Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for these students. I pray, Lord, that you would minister to their needs, whatever they are. I pray, Lord, that you'd be glorified, that you'd be honored in everything we do. Dear Lord, I just pray that I'm able to convey some good ideas, some creative ideas to help students with their special events tonight. I pray, Lord, that you would help us to glorify you in our faith-based nonprofit organizations. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, what I'd like for you to do for the assignment for this week is to create a scenario for some sort of a special event and begin to plan through the event. It doesn't have to be extremely detailed. I'm looking for a page or two of your planning so that I can begin to see that you understand some of the fundamentals that we talk about in this particular lecture. You know what? Everybody loves to have a celebration, right? And it's something that can be really, really exciting. A lot of special events are focused around celebrating something, even if it's making it through another year. So let's jump into our content, and we're going to talk about some of the rationale behind, or procedures behind a special event in a nonprofit organization, and then the importance of special events in marketing are the focus for this particular lecture. So, everybody loves to celebrate, and the need to celebrate is perhaps even more vital to the sustenance of the human spirit than the basic physical needs of food, clothing, and shelter. And certainly as to Christians, we realize that having relationships with God, with the people that He's created, and doing His work are more important than certainly the welfare of food, clothing, and shelter. The welfare of communities is recognized in most cultures with public displays, marking significant occasions. Maybe it's a harvest event, a harvest festival. A number of years ago, I was asked to go to a small German community out in western Kansas and speak at their Danke Fest, which was German. Danke was German for thanks, to give thanks. And they had a festival, and it was around harvest time. So there are a lot of religious festivals, a lot of cultural festivals, and these activities, let's face it, they've been developed way beyond their traditional focus. For example, St. Patrick's Day, you don't have to be Irish to celebrate St. Patrick's Day. Amen? People are involved in the parades and the festivities that don't have anything to do with Ireland. And so, because people like special events and celebration, they're likely to participate even if they don't exactly subscribe to your cause. And maybe that's because they don't know that they want to be a part of your cause, and your special event can be a way to attract them. Events can be organized by a range of organizations, both local all the way to international. And they can include activities even like Olympics or Special Olympics or some sort of clean up the world day or something like that. National events like the 40-hour famine or celebrations that have to do with national identity. Cinco de Mayo passed on our calendar not long ago. They can be a source of local nonprofit organizations' annual fundraising. And most nonprofit organizations have some sort of a fundraising ball annually that's a major event. In the last lecture, I mentioned golf tournaments, and that's becoming less popular as the sport of golf is a smaller and smaller portion of society. But in this area here in the Midwest, we've had clay shoots where everybody brings a shotgun. We've had men and women come, and they enjoy trying to blast a clay target out of the air. But there are a number of different activities that people would like to participate in. I found that fun runs, telethons, walkathons are very, very popular, and they're not popular with me, but some people even like the virtual walkathons or virtual runs, 5Ks or what have you, where they can actually virtually walk in their own space or on their own path, or they can contribute and do some other activity like ride an exercise bike or something like that. So I know here at Calvary we've started doing a popular special event, an auction, for the last several years, and so it can have a lot of fun, but there's so many other special events, and I would just like you as a student to think about what we talk about in this particular lecture, and think about how it would apply to your organization or an organization that you know about. How would you want to construct it? So there are some design issues that I think it's really, really important. First of all, there are stages in event management that are really similar to every other management exercise we teach. So you want to plan. I know I talked about this last week, so I'm not going to overkill it, but you want to plan and plan and plan and think about the contingencies, and you want to think very, very thoroughly about what you're going to do. And then you want to prepare, and then you want to produce it, and then you want to evaluate it. And just like direct marketing that we talked about last week, you want to report the results. Usually in a special event, we talk about a number, maybe a number of attendees or a number of tasks completed or items donated, or most commonly dollars raised. So I've already mentioned that people like to celebrate. Another important facet about special events is it can create a larger awareness of a cause. If you have a special event, there are a couple of moments that you want to make sure that you plan into the activity. One of those moments is perhaps a case study that describes your cause. And it might be a person that was helped. It might be passing out pictures of someone that you're asking people to pray for as they've completed your program and now they're on to the next big thing. It might actually be a testimonial or some other big emotional piece to let people know that here is someone or some cause that's been helped, and your nonprofit organization exists for this purpose. So you want that to be clarified and very, very well known. I said there are two crucial pieces. The other crucial piece is whatever it is you're trying to accomplish. Usually it's to raise dollars. So you want to make sure that you have an ask that relates back to the emotional appeal, and you want the ask to be very clear. And just like the mailers with the response cards that we talked about in the last week's lecture, You want to make sure that you have appropriate donation levels. You want to think through all of the different possibilities that you would have for somebody who is there to support your cause. Maybe it's to ask for volunteer hours. Maybe it's to ask for someone to man part of the service organization. Maybe it's to distribute food, to help organize clothes. Maybe it's to go solicit donations from other people. Maybe it's to be a table host for another item that's coming up. You just want to have it very, very clear what it is that you want. Now, another bullet point that I added on here that I think is crucial is you want the event to be fun. You see, in recent years, I think the reason why sporting events like golf tournaments and fun runs are so successful is because they are fun. That's why we stopped saying 5K and we started saying fun run, is because we want there to be some enjoyment, and that's where camaraderie and relationship building is magnified. Additionally, I know that at our auction fundraising event, it's a time for a little bit of comedy and tomfoolery, and it's fun to tactfully razz the right people and have fun and games in the auction so that there's some enjoyment had by everyone. And so creating that element of fun is an important part of the planning process. I think it's good to involve the stakeholders more, because not only are they invested in the project, but additionally, you get their good ideas. Proverbs says there's wisdom in a multitude of counselors. And so people who are already involved in the organization, not just staff, but your volunteers and maybe even some of your donors, ask them questions. Ask them if they would be on a committee. Ask them if they would help in a certain way on the night of your special event or the day of your special event. Involve the stakeholders, because then they have an opportunity to meet other people, develop more relationships, and to say to others their testimony about why they think it's so important for them to be involved in this particular ministry. If they tell why it's important to them, then other people may be able to relate to that and say, well, that's something that means a lot to me, and that's important to me. I want to be a part of this as well. And the other thing about special events, when we think about rationale and design, is we want it to be able to be what we call a soft draw to recruit new stakeholders. So I would much rather invite someone to a home event before inviting them to church, because then they can get to know some of the people who go to the church. But that's not always possible. In the realm of other nonprofit organizations, sometimes it's really great to be able to say, hey, come to this event because I need a fourth person on my golf team. I think you and your wife would really enjoy this banquet, this event. You can hear a little bit about what it is that I do or what I'm involved in. And I've paid for your ticket, so it's just a night of enjoyment and for us to do something together. But at the same time, maybe you're interested in the cause. It's completely up to you. So a lot of times people will come to an event like that, whereas they wouldn't come to another type of event, or just come and do a visit of your nonprofit organization. Now, I want to define special events a little bit further. So, a diverse range of activities can be classified as special events, okay? What I mean by that is civic events, often linked to culture, perhaps national pride like a 4th of July parade, fairs and festivals, musical events like New York's concerts in Central Park, for example. There's many others. For nonprofits, events can be equally diverse. And nonprofit organizations may also get involved in events that focus on communication, like awareness campaigns or program launches, even ribbon cuttings. For example, the Cancer Council might promote skin cancer prevention at a beach by having a one-day event that seems spontaneous to beachgoers but was well planned in advance. And they're maybe giving out sunblock or high SPF suntan lotion. The taxonomy of special events is so broad that one researcher says it will never be possible to come up with a universal, standardized definition or a classification of which types of events are exceptional or special. It's clearly a matter of perspective or preference. However, in terms of defining events, the perspective of two stakeholders should be considered. One is the organizers or producers of the event, including their associates, which is the sponsors, business partners, employees, volunteers, people working at the event. And the second is the customers of the event, or the guests, the visitors, the participants, the audience. It's important to consider the goals and expectations of both of these large parties of people when developing special events. So with this in mind, Getz, a researcher, suggested two definitions, one applying to each of the stakeholder groups. So these are Getz's definitions for special events. To the organizers, a special event is a one-time or infrequently occurring event outside the normal program of activities of the sponsoring or organizing body. So anything that's different. To the customer or guest, a special event is an opportunity for leisure, social, or cultural experience outside the normal range of choices or beyond everyday experience. You know, a further defining feature is that if events are held frequently, they'll become routine. So I remember one pastor friend saying, if we have a special offering every week, it ceases to become special. So special offerings should be very, very limited. It's the same thing with special events. Because events are unique from each party's perspective, nonprofit organizations need to continually reinvent their event to maintain internal and external interest. So even if we do something every year like a fundraising banquet, we need to have some special things that we do each year. As an example, Special Olympics had a basketball week. The Federated International Basketball Association worked with the Special Olympics in Europe to organize a range of activities associated with enhancing and promoting basketball in the disabled community. This multinational collaboration included 21 countries and more than 7,000 Special Olympic athletes. Each individual event is unique and needs to be planned separately. However, overall coordination among the events is also necessary. The scope of this event is enormous because it brings opportunities to so many more players. The benefits are also extensive too. With grassroots supports from both of these organizations, they can both experience growth as a result of it. But just as we see in the actual Olympic events, over time some things stay the same, but some things change. Some events are added, others fall away and are participated in less often. So when we define our special event further, it's important that we have a diversity of events. However, at the same time, those events need to match the nonprofit organization and make sense for the nonprofit organization. Additionally, we need to clarify the need or the cause of the organization and what it is we're trying to accomplish. And the special event may be a direct response to a need. We may actually say with a special event, we're doing this auction because we're trying to fix this cause. And if we raise this amount of money will be matched. If we go over it, this amount of money, we can also do this, meet this cause with those funds. And guests, people that attend the event, or stars, people who speak at the event, or special invited celebrities that come to the event, may actually be customers. Maybe somebody who's a celebrity that was once helped by your ministry or by your nonprofit organization. Or maybe somebody who knows a family member or knows a friend who was helped by your ministry or your nonprofit organization. That can make it even more special. And as I've already said, special events can become routine, and you do want to have a pleasant experience. They can be fun, and you want people involved. So let's talk a little bit about the scope of the event as you're planning. And this isn't easy because special events are all so different, okay? So be sort of forewarned. According to Montgomery and Strick, in a study that they did back in the late 90s, there are two criteria for holding an event: cost and convenience. For example, and this is conventional wisdom we used up to today, cost and convenience are extremely important. For nonprofit events, however, these criteria may be broadened to include publicity, which covers issues related to creating awareness and knowledge about the cause and the event. The critical issue is whether the object to generate revenue for a nonprofit organization is actually critical. A charity event might be held for a for-profit organization along with other activities like marketing and such, and people go to it because it's fun. They don't even care about the cause, but may they enjoy buying the products. So making these compatible is a good part of your thinking. Nonprofit events frequently involve multiple groups, including community-based nonprofits, governmental bodies for nonprofit organizations, and private groups. And they can be designed for leisure, educational, or social purposes, with a large range of aims and objectives, which may very well be involved in the event. Like, for example, improving your health or social integration. These are just examples of things that may happen in a nonprofit event. I was impressed when I went to a special event recently, and the speaker said, "Look around, and what do you see?" And I looked around and I saw people. I saw all kinds of people, and the speaker said, he says, look at the diversity. Look at the color of our skin and how different all of us are. That was quite a startling thing to realize, that we had integrated under one common cause. So we have a couple of important clients that we're going to invite to the event. We're going to have donors and clients. We're going to have two special groups of people, clients and donors. And we really need them both, because we need the clients to show the donors who it is that we're helping. As I mentioned earlier, events are temporary in nature and only last a short period of time, so they're really highly perishable, so you want to get the biggest bang for your buck that you can. And so you want to have an experience that's memorable, but you also want it to work in concert with your other marketing activities. So as you brand or as you solicit funds and you're promoting your event, you want to make sure that it complements what you're doing instead of distracting people from their monthly giving or from the other causes that are going on. Planning an event involves a strategically oriented process that's illustrated in the graphic that I've shown you here. A lot of detailed guidelines. Many special events occur outdoors, and so they are seasonal, or can only occur during certain time periods. Maybe they have a leisure component that goes along with them, like a music festival in the park, or a day out for the whole family, maybe a carnival or festival of some kind. More leisure time provides an opportunity for having more events, but there's a danger that too many events can lead to audience fatigue as well as aggressive competition. Given that each nonprofit organization can control only its own events and provide their own unique experience, it's important to take other organizations into consideration when you're planning an event. So as you can see in the illustration, as you think about who your people are and how your planning will be affected, you want to think about the inner circle of the nonprofit that includes your volunteers and your staff, your event management team, and your audience. And then the broader scope of the event that includes these suggested areas and probably many more. And on this graphic we have listed sponsors. You know, if you want a major sponsor for an event, that sponsor is not going to sponsor 2 events in the same week. Price Chopper is probably not going to donate a fried chicken dinner to 2 organizations at the same time. They might, maybe they can, but you want to be aware of such things. You want to think about the media. If they're tied up doing some other special event across town, they may not have time to cover your special event. You want to think about housing for people that come in from out of town if that's appropriate. Tourism, transportation, how the Convention Bureau can assist. You want to think about local government, including emergency support. You want to think about cab companies and public transportation, even rental car agencies. I know that I've traveled for work, and it's always an inconvenience when there's a convention at the same hotel I'm staying at. So you want to think about those things. And you also want to think about who you might want to invite or who would be a part of it. Maybe you want to inform police or fire. Maybe you want to inform other community groups that may be a supporter of your plan. Maybe you want to think about politicians that you would like to invite because they could be a public figure that would come because they could bring notoriety to your cause in exchange for promoting themselves. So just some things to think about. And as we think about special events and why, we have to create some objectives. And you can have more than one of these, but it's hard to do everything well. And so while you can have more than one of these, the truth is it's very difficult to do all of these things well. So you may have to pick out one or two or three of these things to do well and let other things fall into a different priority. But of course, usually what we think about with special events is fundraising. But I think it's important to create awareness, because when people in the community see your special event or see your parking lot full of cars, I think sometimes the decorations on the outside and the signage and the messaging on the outside of the building can be as powerful or more powerful than the messaging that goes on the inside. So if you have a special event, not only will a huge banner help participants find your special event, it'll signal to the larger community what's going on. An objective can be educating a larger community. Maybe they're stakeholders, but they've only partaken of one service that's offered by your nonprofit organization. Maybe this will allow them to see a bigger picture of the services that are offered. Obviously, one of the objectives is so that you could continue to carry on programming, but it's not just for the purpose of the funding of that, but so that people know who to refer to your nonprofit organization. So when people have this particular need that you're meeting, when that happens to them, to their family, to their friends, to their neighbors, they know who to call and who to talk to. Also, I think another important objective is to create regular contact with volunteers and donors. Oftentimes when we're doing our nonprofit work, we're so busy with the work that we don't have time for that personal connection. And sometimes donors and volunteers are so busy, we can't have an individual event, get together with them for coffee, but they'll come to a special event and we might be able to have a 5 or 10 minute conversation with them. And then also team building, creating a link to bring staff and stakeholders together for a special cause. And while it's a lot of work to do a special event, at the end of the day, the team, which includes some stakeholders that were on your committee, but your staff, your employees, your clients, we can say, wow, we did all that together, and that was an accomplishment. So here's some ideas. We want to set some goals for our special events. And so there's some things that we should do. When we set objectives, for example, that refers to developing a set of aims for an event that specifically state what the event is designed to achieve. We've already mentioned that, but managing events is really complex, mainly because it involves planning and controlling a lot of activities that have critical deadlines and require input from a range of different sources. So because many events in the nonprofit sector are conducted infrequently, or maybe only once or once a year, a nonprofit's managerial competency in hosting events and learning from past experience may have its limits. You may not have a lot of data, and from one year to the next, unless you kept really good notes, some of that may have been lost. It's been my personal experience that it's good to assign somebody to the task of keeping all the records and creating some sort of a guide. Typically in the graduate business program, I might make that a special independent project for someone who needs to complete their experience component of their graduate degree, is I may have them assist me in a special event, but recording and documenting all the steps in the process so that it can be replicated. Nonprofit organizations traditionally haven't possessed the same range of managerial skills that's required, which is understandable because the objectives of nonprofits and for-profit organizations are quite different, And nonprofit organizations just want to help the people they were formed to help. But undertaking an event in the nonprofit sector means a great deal of management. So, to boost manager confidence, not to mention the chances of success of an event, it's critical to establish objectives that state exactly what the event is supposed to be. So objectives need to be formulated and agreeable to the stakeholders, and they need to be realistic in terms of being achievable, and timelines have to be able to be achievable, as we've mentioned in previous things in this class. So with that in mind, some goal setting for special events is to determine the feasibility of special events. Do an assessment, complete a feasibility study, look at the internal and external business environment, do an analysis of requirements for hosting the event, an assessment of broader event concepts or ideas. To assess the external environment, the organization will need to have an extensive amount of information. The main concern for nonprofit event organizers is to assess the competition in relation to the geographic area, the target population, the type of event, the type of organization that's seeking support, identifying the total number of events that are held annually in the region. The nonprofit organization needs to think about how to design the most appropriate type of event, as well as the most suitable time to have the event. So from this initial analysis of what to do, the organization should be able to define a concept suitable for a target market. And the market's preferences and size will also need to be considered, as with all the different products available. One doesn't want to develop a product that's on a scale of thousands when it only needs to be for hundreds. So you need to look at the number of events in the community and consider how many people will participate. So other external factors include the political environment. You certainly don't want to protest at your event, unless, of course, your event is a protest. But you need to consider the political environment, and that includes permits and licenses and traffic management and police presence, maybe emergency rescue. And all of these things, generally, even though they're publicly supplied, may require you to have a special agreement with those emergency service providers, and maybe even an investment or an outlay of cash. You want to consider levels of sponsorship, and you want to consider special equipment. You want to consider catering. You want to consider the availability of accommodations in terms of facilities to host the event, hotel accommodations for participants and guests. You want to think about insurance, and you want to think about the lead time required to plan and organize the event. From an internal perspective, the organization has to undertake a needs analysis. That means a series of questions about the rationale for hosting the event. And the first question should be, is this the best way to achieve our objectives? Because if it's not, a special event is a lot of work. Other matters that need to be addressed might include who the event is being held for, or the target market, why the target market would attend, why would they want to attend, and who would benefit from the event. The feasibility analysis should include an audit of the organization's financial and human resources in order to identify shortfalls and devise strategies to meet them. And this can be done using a traditional strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities threats analysis, or a SWOT analysis, which business students learn about in their strategy course. But a major reason to use a SWOT analysis is to help you determine the core focus of the event based on internal organizational factors and external environmental factors. So used effectively, a SWOT analysis ensures the firm knows where it is today so it can focus on ways its positives, that is, its strengths and opportunities, can be maximized while negatives are minimized. The negatives are their weaknesses and threats. Strengths relate to the organization's competencies and abilities, what it has the ability to do. Weaknesses, on the other hand, identify internal issues that would inhibit the organization's ability to achieve its objectives for an event. So you don't want an event to contradict an organization's objectives. While a weakness, such as a declining support base, might be used to focus an event, it would also make hosting a major event less feasible. So negatives and positives need to be considered together to provide an overall holistic view of the dimensions of the event. So once external and internal environments have been assessed, you want to develop a business plan, and which includes this goal setting and all these concepts we've been talking about. Organizations then need to select a site or a venue, and a venue might refer to choosing an event location that's in line with the needs of the audience. But remember the old real estate adage, location, location, location. I think it's really good to have the event take place on the premises. So having a for-profit rock concert in an isolated area might make sense, but having a jazz festival to raise money for a charity in the same location might be inappropriate. The fundraising event may need to be in a public place that's easily accessible. But once a location has been chosen, then venue-specific resources might arise, like the availability of parking or transportation, amenities, utilities. All these needs link directly to your target audience. So those are some core issues that might need to be addressed. But you can determine many of these by doing a thorough SWOT analysis. For those of you who haven't taken strategy, take a piece of paper and divide it into 4 quadrants. Write strengths and weaknesses across the top 2 quadrants. Across the bottom 2, write opportunities and threats, so that threats is in the bottom right hand. And then begin to list all that you can think about. That's a simplified SWOT analysis. So here's the structure that you would want to construct, and this isn't necessarily all-encompassing, but I mentioned the venue already. And the venue may be the location of your nonprofit organization so people know where you are and they know what the inside of the facility looks like. But maybe your little clinic isn't big enough to host an event. So maybe you choose a venue that's nearby so you could give people tours if they hadn't been there. Or maybe you'd want to make tours something you do before or during the event. You want to have an innovative look for your special event without it being too complicated, because the events get really complicated and you want to have all the details sorted out before the event happens. You want to have appropriate catering, and this is something that you really need to look into. If you're going to have people interacting with one another, you wouldn't necessarily want messy or greasy food, red sauces, or things that spill, things that people might be embarrassed about and cause them to leave. So you want to think about what's appropriate and what's going to be good for the event. Likewise, if it's outside, you want it to be easy to manage. You don't want to have floppy plates and difficulty. You want to have a well-planned program, and I can't assert enough how important it is to get down to business. Just like the letter I taught you how to write in the last class, you want to have a very well-constructed appeal. Of course, a well-planned program would have a short welcome, perhaps a prayer for a faith-based organization, maybe introduce some key people, invite people to interact with others that are nearby them, tell them that the program is going to begin maybe after dinner or after dessert is served. I would get right to it in the program. If you're going to have some sort of entertainment, I think it's best to have it related to somebody in your program, maybe a staff worker or a volunteer who can give a short testimony before or after their performance. If it was a Christian university, maybe a group of students who are students at the university. If it's some other form of entertainment, just make it so that it connects with the rest of the program. Then I would have a testimonial or a case study that's shared, and oftentimes I recommend to nonprofit organizations that they create a video so that everything is used efficiently and that sight and sound are perfectly measured. And with a video, sometimes you can put words on the video that drop subtle hints about what it is you're trying to emphasize. And then have a very well planned ask and appeal as part of the program. And you want to be specific. You want to state the cause succinctly, and you need to state the need, and you want to have options for the donors, because some will accept small offers and some will be prepared to give larger offers. And my experience has been many people come to fundraising special events with checks in their pockets that are already made out. And I always try to give a special challenge to those people in the appeal and say, I know many of you are prepared. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. But consider what else you can do beyond this event. Maybe you'll take a response envelope home with you and take it with you and pray about what else you can do. And some people will actually delight you and pull out their checkbook and write an additional check or another check. And make the appeal strong. Don't hold back. You went to all this trouble. Ask people for money and use emotion. And then have some other tips that I would have for you is keep the overall program short so people don't get tired and worn out. Have planned interaction. Be careful about how you plan your seating. Put appropriate people together. In fact, I think it's good to put stakeholders among people that are somewhat new to the organization. You don't want to have a table full of people who don't know each other and are foreign to the organization. And involve your stakeholders. Have them come around and ask people if they need more beverages. Have them come around and pass things out. Give them assignments to go and touch base with certain people that you've invited. Introduce stakeholders to people who are new guests. Use the special event. All of your fundraising personnel should be at the special event, and they should be working harder than any other day of the year. So this has been a briefer lecture than some of the weeks we've had in the past, but I've given you a great deal of content. And so now I want you to go and do your assignment. What I want you to do is to think about a special event and sketch out some of the plans that you're thinking of. I gave you some bare bones, but now think about a particular event and sketch out a plan. Just write a page or two of narrative. It doesn't have to be thorough or complete. I just want to see that you're engaging some of the thoughts that I've given you in this lecture. And then next week, we'll talk about fiscal control and volunteers. and I'm looking forward to spending that time with you. This course is going by really fast. By the time you're watching this video, we're halfway through the course. So look ahead to what's coming, because this is a 7-week cycle, and our deadlines are going to be approaching very fast. But thanks for watching, and I appreciate each and every one of you. And even though we can't interact interpersonally because of COVID-19, I'm looking forward to the day that we can. So have a godly day, and may God richly bless you and use you in your nonprofit ministry.